The knock came just before midnight, sharp and uncertain, carried on the frozen wind that swept across the plains. Inside the ranch house, the fire burned low, its embers popping softly in the quiet. The rancher had been sitting alone, staring into the flames, counting another year he'd survived and another he'd lost. When the sound came again, firmer this time, his hand stilled on the poker. No traveler knocked this late in winter, not on New Year's Eve, not unless they were desperate. He opened the door, and the cold rushed in like a living thing. A woman stood there, thin and exhausted, her face pale beneath a worn shawl. 3 children clung to her skirts, their boots soaked through, their breaths coming out in weak clouds. Snow dusted their hair and lashes. The smallest child swayed on unsteady legs, too tired to cry. "I was told you might be kind," the woman said, her voice barely holding together. "We don't need much, just the night." The rancher said nothing at first. 2 winters ago, he'd buried his wife on a hill behind the house. Since then, he'd learned to live with silence, with long nights and longer memories. He looked at the children, at the way their hands trembled, and something in his chest shifted, painful and familiar. "It starts with us tonight," he finally said, stepping aside. "Come in before the cold finishes what the world's already started." The fire was built up until the room glowed orange and gold. Blankets were pulled from a chest, bread broken, water warmed. The children watched everything with wide eyes, as if afraid it might vanish. When warmth reached their bones, they sank to the floor by the hearth and slept without being told. The woman stayed awake. As the clock crept toward midnight, she told him her story in fragments. Her husband had died on the trail west, fever taking him in 3 days. The town they reached offered sympathy at first, then suspicion, then nothing at all. Work dried up. Tonight, the landlord had wanted the house cleared for men with money and drink. She'd been given an hour and a shove into the snow. Outside, distant gunshots rang out as the new year arrived. Inside, the rancher added another log to the fire and listened. When she finished, he nodded once, as if making a decision long overdue. "No one leaves here in the dark," he said. "You can rest." One night turned into another. Then the snow melted and days grew longer. The children learned the ranch as if they'd always belonged to it, chasing chickens, feeding the horse, laughing loud enough to scare the crows away. The woman worked beside him without complaint, mending clothes, cooking meals, learning the land and its moods. She never asked what would come next. The rancher noticed the quiet was gone. In its place were footsteps, voices, small hands tugging at his coat. He found himself smiling without meaning to, sleeping better than he had in years. One evening, as the first spring breeze slipped through the open door, he watched the children gathered at the table and the woman humming softly as she poured coffee. He understood then that family didn't always come the way men planned. Sometimes it came knocking in the dead of winter, carrying nothing but hope. And sometimes saying yes was all it took to begin again.